Hi, everyone. I'm Dave.
And I'm Jeremy.
Welcome to our Tech Over Coffee podcast. We're so excited to be filming from the studio on the main campus of Chipola College in Marianna, Florida. Just so wonderful that Chipola College sponsors our Tech Over Coffee podcast. Gives us a chance to talk about business topics, tech-based topics, current events, and we often bring some exciting things where we can build on some trends. We have some consistent trends about technology, some EVs, research, even some space. So I think we have a couple of those themes even for you today. So Jeremy, what do you have to get us started?
Sure. Yeah. Let me run down the list here because we've got quite a few. So I think I want to start on some happy news, get a little unhappy, uh, talk about some companies making some big money moves, some people that run companies making some personal moves. Uh, and other things like that. So right off the top, let's talk about some space stuff.
All right. That's a great topic.
Uh, if you've not paid any attention to the sky lately, Jupiter and Saturn are getting really close. And it's the first time in like 800 years that they've actually got this close. They're going to get within, from like our tiny perspective on Earth, like a dime's distance away. In space, it's some like tenth of a degree or something like that, but it's kind of crazy.
So in the future, that'll be exciting when we're actually traveling throughout our solar system to note the alignment of planets. That might be a time to travel from one to the next, and I can only imagine that's going to be an exciting time within our space industry.
Yeah, just hop in between the different moons or planets that are working out for us at the time. That'd be kind of neat.
And for us to bookmark that real quick, Jeremy, I mean, we got the moon coming up in 2024, and then I think they're saying early 2030s tomorrow. So that's kind of some important steps along the way.
Yeah, and not that far off.
I know.
Actually, it's like you've got the progress happening so quickly with these rockets, and they've done multiple tests now with the Crew Dragon capsules sending up to the space station. So, that's very, very good progress.
Yes, and they've had some kind of on-the-fly learning, which you always need to do in space. From what I read, with any business project, right, you have to adapt, and they weren't able to dock with the International Space Station as they had planned, so they had to sleep in the actual capsule itself. So they're learning some different nuance that'll help them on other projects.
Which at least there's enough like space, and it's been designed in the capsule around the people that are going to be using it. So I've read a lot about how initial space capsule designs, back in the 60s, didn't even have windows to let the astronauts look out. And the astronauts demanded you have to put a viewport so we could actually see what's going on. And that came in very handy when they had to take over for all of these automated systems. So, there's actual space in these new Spacex capsules because they like take these steps and put them into the design.
It's interesting. We talk about technology, how exciting it is based on various projects or companies releasing updates. But that foundational thought of human-computer interactions, I mean, can't be overstated. No matter what the technology is, you need to look at the human perspective and how does someone need to utilize that. So of course you need windows in your capsule. Of course you need to experience the travel, and you may need a backup plan to kind of eyeball a landing possibly.
I mean, air conditioning is kind of important because it gets really hot.
Right.
These things are a key.
So back to that. Thank you for graciously bookmarking the alignment of the planets. There's some history with that. 800 years. Wow, that's we have such a young country. Wow, that is so much older than our country. Twice.
When you consider that, you go back. I think it was like 1,222 or something like that. The last time the planets aligned like they are now.
That's some good math on the fly. Wow,
it's something like that. I think I just remember it completely wrong. Who knows? But on the other side of space, a little bit closer to home and not quite so far out, we've got SpaceX actually getting some big money from the FCC rural internet grants. They've got something like $855 million to bring internet to people in rural areas that currently don't even have that kind of access.
So important. One, it's important for just people in general to have access. A lot of stuff is on the internet during this period of COVID. Need access to Zoom, need access to research things, to learn about ways you can protect yourself, your family, your friends. So that's important. And then the thought of the business environment, you need access because current competitive businesses and future ones will be e-enabled. They'll be ones that actually have an online presence. That'll be mandatory. That'll be expected. You have to have an online presence. So you see in the Panhandle of Florida, in the southeastern part of the U.S., there's rural areas, Jeremy, as we know. But even bigger than that, right? Throughout the world, it's going to have a service.
Yeah, definitely. And that's actually a really good thing that the FCC is putting that kind of money to a company that's not just supplying the United States, but it's also other countries around the world. And that money can go a long way. And that's actually a good prospect for SpaceX and Starlink because this is now the first basically guaranteed demand. Because this is money that's not just paid out in one big chunk, but it's going to be paid out over time, I think over 10 years or something like that. I think that there are stipulations on users and actually showing that it's getting done. Because in the past, there have been issues with some of these grants that have been given to certain internet companies and then no real progress was made.
Yeah, it seems to me that internet access should be something like a basic utility, almost like water, that you should be able to go anywhere and have access to water. You can pay for more premium types of water, but you should have access to just clean water. So everyone should have access to internet for a nominal fee, regardless of where you live. We got to get to that point, and this is a positive step in that direction. And like you said, it's not going to just be in the U.S., it'll be throughout the world, which what a valuable thing to do to provide that access to others. That's going to help them catch up. If there are areas where they're behind, access to knowledge, information will help them.
And in some instances, it actually helps leapfrog a lot of other areas because there's a lot of money that's involved in laying down cable, right? And if you just completely skip that, I mean, some areas now are stuck with like terrible copper wire that's been put down just before fiber optics came into effect. And fiber optics are really the like gold standard of internet. But if you can just leapfrog that, if you're living in an area where putting down cable is basically impossible, satellite internet and high-speed, low-latency satellite internet that SpaceX and Starlink is trying to provide is going to be paramount.
If you think back a few decades ago, countries that were competitive had the telephone poles, had the landlines that had been laid, and they had access, and they had such a competitive advantage over regions of the world, countries that didn't have that industry in place. All of a sudden, mobile access and mobile towers, cell towers, kind of could bypass that, and you didn't even need that step. So this type of technology could, as you said, help leapfrog, could bypass. And just think how it's going to lead to other industries, other sub-industries of just, say, mobile app development, of having access, and if their device is a smart device of some kind. I mean, apps are just going to continue to be the future.
For simple data collection, right? If you're out in the middle of the desert somewhere that definitely doesn't have cell tower access, if you have a small dish that can connect to Starlink's internet, and then you could have an always-on device in the middle of nowhere, possibly collecting data, taking pictures, streaming video, high-quality video, off to a research station somewhere else. I mean, it's groundbreaking, really.
Exciting topic, and that is such a way to give back. There's going to be definitely revenue generated for Starlink with that through those partnerships, but a way just to do a greater good, and the money will follow for sure. But well, it's going to have a lasting impact. So that what a powerful thing to do for Elon and his collaborators.
Yeah, and that bit of money in the beginning is definitely good to help jumpstart the whole process because 900 satellites in, they're still moving for 12,000 total. So it's a lot of satellites that have to go up. And at this juncture, there's only maybe half of the U.S. that is even covered. Coming into the next few months, we're looking at the rest of the U.S. and then hopefully broader spans of the globe. So a lot of good moves on Elon's part.
That's right. So does that lead into a Tesla topic, or are we going to kind of bookmark that for a little bit later?
Well, I think we're definitely talking about moves Elon's been making. So, I've heard some rumors, Elon himself saying that he might be moving to Texas from California. I'm not sure if this is avoiding regulations, trying to get away from certain people he doesn't really want to be associated with anymore, or if it's a closer focus on business interests, because it's a common thing for Elon Musk to do, to move between different locations based on whatever big task and project is most forefront in his mind.
It's interesting. You look at just the global marketplace, and countries that weren't as competitive years in the past, they've actually created a more tax-friendly business environment that's attracted startups, attracted established firms to go and operate. And so that's a trend that's gaining speed. The U.S. in some regards has kind of fallen behind. With we haven't had always the best tax structure for firms. So that's working throughout the global marketplace, and we've talked about this a bit in previous podcasts and just our different collaborations. But now you're looking at within the U.S. borders, within states. Now states are following that same lead to become more competitive. And just from my lens, you'll be able to see states actually outcompete, I would say, others just by creating a more business-friendly environment. That's going to lead to a better environment for those to live and work in. And you could see this migration. You already, I think, not too long ago, the Florida was the fourth largest state in the union, and now they're the third largest state, and they passed New York. So I think you'll see some changes for Texas to overtake California. That would be enormous. But Texas is number 2 and Florida's number 3. So Elon moving to Texas, not to grab too much of the microphone time here, but I do know during COVID, I think California had asked Elon, Tesla, hey, please stop manufacturing. Let's keep it safe. And I think he responded, and however Elon responds and said, it is safe. We're opening operations.
Yeah, yeah, kind of just went along with how they wanted to go, and it's kind of up to the workers, right? Can you really tell people you can't go do your job if they're willing to possibly take that risk on themselves? Now, this move that's happening here, it's kind of started with Elon has I don't know what you would call it. I think it's let's see here. He's got a foundation. And that foundation, he's moved from California to Texas. And so I think that's, different funds and things that he's looking at focusing on. And currently they have the Gigafactory being built out in Texas. So it only kind of makes sense for him to move his personal assets and himself as well. So, it's big moves.
It is. And look at Tesla overall, another big move we were talking about. You had some good research. What did you uncover about Tesla possibly in the future?
Yeah, so Tesla is going for a second big stock drop. So they're looking to sell off about $5 billion of stock in a big sale, which is the second and the last 3 months that Tesla's pulled off. And makes a lot of sense with the valuations being as high as they are. I think Tesla is valued at like $600 billion. So selling off $5 billion in stock is not that hard of a move.
So are you using the M word? He's selling off $5 million and they're worth $500 million? What did you say?
No, I was using a B for billion.
Wow, that's amazing. So now Tesla's on the S&P 500. They had Apple is a $1 trillion company, but Apple and Tesla had a split about the same time. And they're not apples and oranges, but they're definitely different size firms.
Apples and Teslas.
Apples and Teslas.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Oh, man, that's good. So the thought, though, with Apple's, their stock's still staying in the 100s, 124, 125 or so. As Tesla had this split, they were about 200-300, and they're approaching 700. So, wow. Elon has some big has some momentum out there in the business world.
And this massive valuation is definitely brought on by a new wave of investors that are out there, people that are interested in something that is a big, exciting move. Because for a long time, you've not had a lot of choices, especially in like the automotive sector. It's like really come in with some new big innovations, and Elon himself has like put out a memo basically saying that we have to really focus on profitability, otherwise this stock price that we have now is just kind of going to go away. I think he called it a souffle, because that's what they are. They're crafting a souffle. It's this company that's really strong, powerful, has a lot of good things going for it, but it's kind of, you don't want to shake it up too much. And they are making a lot of money. They're selling the Model Ys, the Model 3s are big sellers, and they're even going out and beating big competitors like BMW and GM, for instance. And you have other competitors that are now following up, saying, hey, we're making this next big Tesla killer, and that's only like showing the prominence that Tesla really has, and especially as the world's most valuable automotive company. It only makes sense.
So it might become a more competitive environment, the EV, the automotive industry. Elon is looking at reshaping how cars are manufactured. We've talked about in previous podcasts. So that puts some pressures on firms that maybe have their toe in the water to see, should we have some AV? Should we kind of look at some different technologies with automobiles? Do we want to embrace this as part of our overall mission, or do we want to kind of spin it off to a separate entity? You actually have some research on that, Jeremy.
Yeah, we have a little bit of that that we can get into because so we've got GM, right, that we've talked about a little bit. They're moving in with their electric vehicles, and they're really making a push on the Hummer EV, right? It's like Ford with their Mustang EV. Toyota's now actually making their first like out of Japan, or actually out of China EV, I believe, because they had an EV in China but not outside of China. Toyota's making an EV, so GM has actually made a push with their dealers, basically saying you're going to sell our EVs, and if you don't, we're just going to buy you out, and you don't have to be a GM dealer anymore.
Yeah, so wow, a couple nuggets with that. The Toyota EV, does that have the Lexus name, or what does that have on it?
I'm not sure. I think they're being a little like tight-lipped on this. They don't really want to say, but they're bringing something to the market.
Yeah, I don't know what the traction would be for that. I mean, maybe the Lexus name would garner a lot of attention. So the Hummer name, wow, what a big name. You know, a couple decades ago, that was an established American icon. So bringing it back as an EV, I'm not sure how it'll compete. That'll help us gauge Tesla's success. You know, if they can eat into that, or if Tesla just continues to pull away.
Yeah, and I mean Tesla, of course, this technology-focused, centric company, kind of beating everybody else to the punch, right, with all of the electric vehicle components and their self-driving technology as well. And again, a lot of companies have tried to compete on that too. Uber, for instance, has got a self-driving segment that they've been working on for a long time, and they finally decided to, I don't know if I'd call it give up, but they've definitely given their self-driving segment to another startup that's, I don't know if it's going to be a subsidiary, but they are giving it to a company called Aurora, which has been focusing on self-driving technologies. So they're handing that over and making a large investment to the tune of, I think, a couple $100 million. So it's kind of interesting. They're almost paying this other company, please take this off our hands.
So it reduces their liability, gives them a chance to parlay that research opportunity to see if, wow, is that the future of Uber or the Lyft environment, of to have an AV? Is that, I mean, the acronym for that, to have
an autonomous vehicle?
Yeah. So if that is the way to do that's creative, and I don't know if we feel comfortable as a society yet where you actually would have. We're just barely over the hump of actually feeling comfortable of letting someone you don't know pick you up, right?
Yeah.
Let alone a car
right.
with
like, hey,
nobody.
Let's just bring a total stranger in. Well, let's just have a total empty car come and pick us up, right? So, yeah, I mean, robo-taxis, that's a kind of big move with Tesla. A lot of people are really like, hey, maybe we can have these autonomous vehicles go and make money while we're not using it. Well, that's what Uber is really looking for, right? They're trying to figure out how to take this system that they have set up currently and cut out some of that middleman. You know, do you really have to have a driver in the car? Can you make it drive itself? And a lot of competitors in that sphere, and it's a question of like, who's really going to be the winner? Is it going to be Tesla? Is it going to be, Comma AI? Is it going to be GM?
Well, you talked about them last on our last podcast.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's an open source option there, where with a lot of these things,
Comma AI.
Yeah,
and that's something
AI
you utilize yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what I've got in my car. It's something you can actually put into a GM. It's something you can put into a Toyota. So at some point, maybe all of these auto manufacturers and Ubers and Googles, I mean, I think even Google is trying to kind of take themselves away from the autonomous driving scenario, because maybe they're just going to be beat to the punch and they don't have to put that money into it anymore. Maybe they can just go use somebody else's platform. Might not be Tesla's, it might just be Commas.
Great. So fantastic topics, all the way from space to the automobile industry to being competitive using technology, considering the community and the environment. So a lot of important concepts. We looked at some possible other ideas. Anything you want to kind of throw out as a teaser maybe for our next podcast, or we'll just kind of save that for later?
I think we're going to talk about some Bitcoin stuff later.
Oh, yeah.
I've got some deep Bitcoin history that can hand out, but I think it's a little too in depth for today.
And the crypto environment, we have to end on that huge
Oh,
note.
yeah.
I mean, Bitcoin, what's the price of a coin today?
It's up there. Last time I looked, it was hovering in the inter Bitcoin price here area. Uh, really more about 19,000 or so last time I looked, but it's always
That's
changing.
enormous per coin. Yes.
Yeah, it's always changing, and a lot of that goes to supply and demand, and the market that's out there. Because I mean, you have PayPal and you have big companies getting involved in this, and you actually have, I think, even world finance organizations coming out and saying we really need to take a look at these digital currencies because that really could be the future for where we need to go.
So that'll be a great segment for our upcoming podcast and a great list of topics for us today, Jeremy. So well done.
Oh yes,
I enjoyed it.
thank you very much.
All right.